What's up, my friends? Welcome back to Pantry Prep. Now, we are going to be putting our garden to bed for the winter. It's had its moment in the spotlight this season, producing tons of veggies and pumpkins for us, but now it's time for it to rest. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a few extra layers to the mix, things that I was able to produce right here on the property for no additional cost that are going to supercharge this soil for next season's plantings. Let me show you how. Now, why prepare your garden soil in the winter? Well, it's like feeding your soil a nice home-cooked hearty meal after a long summer's workout. What you're doing is you're preparing the soil for the next spring so it can hit the ground running, or growing. Plus, who doesn't love a garden that's ready to thrive without having to add a bunch of store-bought fertilizers to the mix? Just a few steps now, and you'll be in prime condition to hit the ground running when spring comes. Now let's talk about these guys, fallen leaves. Come this time of year, they're everywhere and they're free. But instead of bagging them up and watching them blow away, we're gonna turn them into nature's very own blanket for the soil. Mulched leaves are soil's superhero. They preserve moisture in the soil, they protect your soil from winter erosion, and as they break down, they add organic matter to the soil. Plus, they're a cozy duvet for all the helpful microbials and worms down in the soil. Now, pro tip, you do wanna mulch up the leaves before throwing them on the soil because otherwise they can mat down, keeping the moisture out and keeping air from being able to circulate in the soil. So you do want to have these chopped up. Plus, it makes it a lot easier to make these a nice, even layer. And now over here, we have our vermicompost, which is basically just organic matter that's been broken down by worms. Now, I know what you're thinking. Worms? Yes. Worms are incredible at breaking down organic matter that would otherwise be a byproduct of our kitchen and turning it into something that is so nutritious for the plants that a little bit really goes a long way. This compost is packed with potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Very important for plant development. And the best part is it's practically free. The worms thrive on the kitchen scraps that we have left over that we'd be throwing away anyways. So instead of forking out for pricey fertilizer, just let the worms do the work. They're gonna break down all this organic matter that you have as a byproduct anyways, but leave you with this very rich soil that will go a long way in your garden. Now, like I was saying, a little bit goes a long way here. So we'll just sprinkle this over the garden in a nice thin layer. And vermiculture is an incredible way for beginning farmers to start producing their own organic super soil, given that all it takes is a small container, a packet of worms that you can buy online, and kitchen scraps that you have anyways. You'll just throw those in, and the worms will do all the hard work. And now for our third layer, biochar. Our buddy Jordy over at Homestead Know-How got us turned on to this concept where we cook down wood or the other organic matter between 1500 and 2000 degrees, breaking it down into this charcoal-like compound that is incredible for the soil. It helps retain moisture, it adds a lot of nutrients to the soil, and it lasts a long, long time, decades even. So we're going to be mixing some of this in as well. Now, they say you want to add about 1 inch of this to your topsoil, maybe 1 parts in 10 to the other dirt that's in your mix. So you don't want to go too crazy with it, but it's incredible. So having a little bit in there is going to go a long way. Now I'm going to be adding each of these things to my hugelkultur in the order left to right, starting with the vermicompost, this organic matter that the worms broke down. Next, our biochar layered on top of it. And then our top dressing is going to be these mulched leaves. Now the mulch leaves I can put on much heavier than these other things, as much as 3 or 4 inches. Now I have quite a bit more mulch leaves than that. You can see off in the distance, a giant pile to work with. Now this vermicompost, I am also going to take a couple scoops of it because there's still tons of little red wigglers in this mix. And I'm going to be putting them back in my composter so that next season I've got tons of worms and tons of vermicompost to work with again then. Now, last spring I bought 100 red wigglers off of Amazon, and they've turned into thousands over the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep just a few shovelfuls of my current vermicompost to add to my compost bin, just to help accelerate the breakdown process and add worms to the mix. All right, let's get our vermicompost added. Try to chop up some of these apples without chopping up too many of the worms. Now, even though I'm adding all these things in layers, I do want them to mix together quite a bit. And you'll notice with the hugelkultur, a lot of times when I throw things on the top, it just tends to roll down to the bottom, but it actually makes it pretty easy to mix together all the different materials that I'm adding onto the hugel, because yes, they will fall down, but you'll notice later on as I rake everything back up, it mixes it as I'm spreading it back out up the hill. So we're gonna end up with a pretty even disbursement between the biochar and our worm mix. Now on to the biochar. Now, if you're wondering how to make some biochar your own, take a look at Jordy's video that I have up here in the tag. Jordy is like a mad scientist when it comes to farm know-how. So check out his channel, give him a follow. I think it'll be well worth your while. All right, we got our biochar on. Last thing to put on is our mulch. Like I said, we probably want 3 or 4 inches of this stuff to provide a good bedding. So it's gonna take a lot more than just that pile. Gonna be digging into the big pile to get this completely covered. All right, we've now got all 3 layers on the hugelkultur for the winter. We got our vermicompost as our first layer, our biochar as our second, and then to cover it all up and keep everything comfy, we've got our mulched up leaves on top, making for a nice bedding. So our bed is now completely ready for winter, and now time for us to relax. Till next time, this has been Jake with Pantry Prep.